Hello, welcome. My name is Manyu, and I'm a teacher for the Bright Path, which is the Ishaya's Ascension. And for me, one of the ways that I can explain that is that it's the Ascension is a pure form of meditation, because what we're doing when we are ascending, which is the practice I've been doing for like the past 20 something years, is you're taking your attention, your awareness from the movement of your mind, from thoughts and from thinking, going into the past, going into the future, and you're moving beyond that into a pure state of experiencing silence, a pure state of experiencing stillness. Because the fact of the matter is this: is that within all of you, within all of life, there's this space, there's this silence, there's this stillness. And when one begins to recognize what that is, if one begins to cultivate the ability to access that, life changes. Life changes, because then you're no longer dominated by the thinking mind. You're no longer dominated by self dialogue. And therefore, when the mind starts to become more still, more tranquil, the mind becomes still, the body becomes still, and the experience becomes very peaceful. And so, experiencing peace is cultivating the ability to quiet the mind, allow the mind to become still. And in my experience of doing this, one of the easiest and greatest ways is the ability to like observe, to watch, to witness the dance of your mind, the dance of thoughts, the the dance between identifying with thoughts and then beginning the process of thinking. And so with ascension, what we're doing is we're moving from this structure of the mind, this thinking structure, which isn't wrong, which isn't bad. It is what it is. However, the thinking state affects your existence. It affects how you actually live your life daily. You know, what you think about, where your attention moves there, you're subject to the quality of whatever thinking state that you move into, whether it's the past and it's something that's sad or tragic that happened, or if you move into the future, which is something anxious, and then it starts to create more fear. And so what what I've recognized, what works, is being able to like notice the identification with that, and then start to create a space, start to create a greater space. With ascension, with the teaching that I practice, you're using a technique that you actually develop, that you actually build on a course. And when you introduce this technique, it actually allows you to create this space. Although you don't actually need a technique to create the space, but it's very helpful to have one, because it's good to have tools when one is immersed in the habit of thinking. When one is immersed in the habit of self dialogue. Like, have you ever noticed, like, you talk to yourself? You know, sometimes it's like kind of like a good discussion, and sometimes it's not so good. You have like an argument with yourself, or you're having your argument with in your head about somebody else, and that self dialogue, that creates some tension sometimes. That critical voice, the nature of that is not always uplifting, it's not always positive. And so being able to recognize these tendencies and these habits is of great benefit, because as you release, as you can let go of these things, you'll begin to experience a greater state of peace, a greater state of calmness, tranquility. Within that, you become more present. And as you become more present, you can like actually observe and recognize things more clearly, instead of through the filters and the barriers of your mind, you know? And so there's an exercise that I do with anybody, and it doesn't matter if you ascend or not, but it's a great exercise, because it begins to show you how it is that you relate to thought. And so I just want to do this quick exercise with you and just see what you see. And you don't have to. You're not trying to do it right or wrong. And just we're just playing with awareness, playing with consciousness, and seeing what's going to happen here. Okay. So what I'm going to have you do is I just want you to just close your eyes, and all I want you to do is just count your thoughts. Doesn't matter if there's a lot of thoughts. Doesn't matter if there's no thoughts. Just count your thoughts. Okay, open your eyes. Very good. Very good. Who counted more than 10 thoughts? Counted less than 10 thoughts? Perfect. Well done. Well done. Let me just, I just want to talk about this exercise for just a moment, okay? So all I did is really just have you just close your eyes and you counted your thoughts, you know? And so when you close your eyes, a thought appeared, and so I'm gonna use I'll use this little this watch right here as a thought. Okay, pretend my hands your awareness. You close your eyes, you're aware, and all of a sudden this thought comes by. You know, and because I ask you to count it, you count it one. So the first thing is that if you counter to this thought, what's between my hands? Space. That which is aware, consciousness, and the movement, the appearance of thought. And so what this shows right here in this moment is that yes, you have a thought, but you're not your thoughts, because this right here, the thought is objective to the awareness. It's an object, this is the subject. The subject is not the object, although it seems like it's the object when it identifies with it, you know. And I'll talk about that in a second. But right here in the moment that you counted this, you're aware of a movement within the screen of your mind. This moves through, you counted it one. Okay? Second thing, what happened when you counted this? Well, simply observing the thought, recognizing it, counting it, this right here will disappear. Comes from nothing, moves back to nothing. The reason why is that it's just temporary. It's a temporary movement through the mind created by an appearance. Like the wind. When it blows and the leaves, they rustle. The wind blows, they rustle, and then they stop. Same thing with the mind. There's energy that moves, mind moves, creates the appearance of something. You count it, it's gone again. The reason why that it disappeared and that it had no bearing is because simply you did not identify with it. You just recognize it and then it's gone. You recognize it and it's gone. I know that doesn't seem like it's really like a big deal. You're like, yeah, so what? But it actually is, because if you notice, you have special thoughts, you have these special memories, you have special things that you move on, you think about, like, you know, what somebody did, somebody says, certain people, certain things about, you know, your universe, your world, that when they come up, it bothers you, right? And so what happens is that thought comes up, and when that thought comes up, you identify with it. You grab onto it, not on purpose, just out of habit. And when you identify with it, you start thinking about it. When you start thinking about it, now you're subject to the quality of whatever thought it is you're thinking about. So you're moving into the future about something that could happen. How is this going to, you know, work out? What am I going to like do? And when you do that, you identify, you leave here, you leave this present state, you move into the future, you start thinking about this thing. And because you start thinking about it, this also carries an emotional component to it. Usually one that's anxious, and therefore it starts to create a tension. It starts to create a stress, right? You move backwards in time on something. You say, why did she say that to me? Why did that happen? You grab onto that. It creates an emotional tension. It creates stress. And if we do this many times, that's where the stress develops. That's where it starts to like build up. That's when we start to create this pressure inside, this friction. It comes from the identification with thoughts. It comes from the identification with thoughts that moves backwards in time and thinking, forward in time and thinking. And this also is the same thing as the self-dialogue. You identify with this voice inside of your head that sounds like you. You start arguing, you start talking to yourself. It creates tension, it creates pressure, it creates stress. So what's the antidote? The antidote is not to do this. The antidote is not to do that. That's easier said than done, however, because we spend a lot of time doing that, you know. But with this exercise, I just wanted to show you that if you, even if you counted 3 thoughts, 4 thoughts, when the thought came up, by simply counting it, this space right here allowed this just to move. The reason is because the thoughts are temporary. They have a beginning and they have an end. All thoughts, they come and they go. All emotions, they come and they go. All feelings come and they go. Sensation, they come and they go. The trick is to recognize which things you identify with out of habit, which things that you like grab onto out of habit that create some strain, that create some stress, that create some turmoil. And if you can see what that is, if you can become aware of it, then all of a sudden the tendency to identify becomes less and less and less. Sometimes it takes a lot of practice to do that. With Ascension, it's wonderful because when you like actually recognize that you're doing this, you simply think the technique that you helped develop, and it automatically creates a release. It creates this greater space, you know. So you don't believe that you're this watch. I'm the watch, you know. And so the space that's created simply by counting, which you just did, it's natural. It's not hard to actually do it. It's not difficult to do it. It's just different because we're not used to doing that. We're more used to identifying. And so play with the counting exercise. See what happens with that. I'll do another one about watching here in a little bit, but play with that counting one and see if that works for you. And if it helps, great. You know. Have a good day. Peace.